All right, let's get to arguably the marquee matchup of Week 5. The 3-1 Falcons face the undefeated Broncos at Mile High. Falcon stars Matt Ryan and Julio Jones both had career games last week against the Panthers. On the other side of the field, Trevor Siemian, who left last week's Broncos game with a left shoulder strain, is expected to play. Will, I want to start with you here. It's going to be a good one. Who wins?
It's strength on strength. It's a close call. Tie goes to the home team. I mean, the Denver Broncos haven't lost to an NFC team at home since 2011. You've got, by the way, an Atlanta Falcons team that's not just Julio Jones. I don't believe this is Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and that's the end of the story. I think those two running backs, one of which, by the way, Tevin Coleman, has some issues in Denver in Mile High Stadium. It's been the altitude this week. He has sickle cell, but he's supposed to play. But we'll see if that compromises his game whatsoever. Does certainly something they're going to watch. I think in the end, the tie goes to the home team, to the better defense over the offense. I'm taking the Falcons.
To the Broncos, you mean?
I'm sorry, I'm taking the Broncos.
Yes. Yeah, Broncos are going to win. I don't think it's that hard a call. The Falcons have a high-flying offense and a bad defense, and the Broncos are Super Bowl champions who have seemed to have gotten better this season, who have an all-time defense that's not always perceived correctly as the all-time elite defense it is, because such a premium is on the passing game now that they don't present you the same kind of fearsome kind of blitzing attack that some of, like, you think of those real strong front sevens. Not that they don't also have that. And those are the kind of defenses you think about the 85 Bears or the Baltimore Ravens or the LT Giants or something like that. This isn't that kind of defense exclusively. This is the kind of secondary that can totally shut down your passing game. And so I don't even think they're given enough credit for how great defensively they are. I don't see the Falcons as in the Broncos class yet. I don't think they've proven that. You look at the points they've given up, 31, 28, 32, 33. They have yet to give up fewer than 4 touchdowns worth of points in a game. And the Broncos have yet to give up even 3 touchdowns worth of points in a game. I like the Broncos clean.
Stephen A., is it a unanimous decision?
Well, I look at the Falcons. Well, listen, I have nothing to add in that regard. The Broncos definitely, to me, will win this game because they're going up against the 29th ranked defense in the National Football League, who's 30th in yards allowed. And by the way, they're second to last in terms of what they surrender through the air. And they're going up against Demarius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and then I combine that with Denver's defense primarily having to worry about Julio Jones more so than anybody else, I just believe that it's a foregone conclusion that Denver is going to win this game.
For some reason, and I know it doesn't make sense, I feel like the Falcons might pull this off. It's just a gut.
Falcons lost to Tampa Bay at home, by the way.
All right. Let's get to our next topic. We actually do have time, and I want to discuss it. So Phillip Rivers is currently playing without Keenan Allen, Danny Woodhead, and Antonio Gates, but he's still on pace for 4,404 yards, 32 TDs, and only 4 interceptions this season. The Chargers, meanwhile, they're on pace to go 4-12, putting up big numbers, but no playoffs. That's been pretty much the story of Rivers' career. That's why his former teammate LaDainian Tomlinson, LT telling NFL Network he thinks the Chargers are in rebuilding mode and should consider trading him. Rivers turns 35 in December. So if the Chargers were to trade Rivers, what team should be first in line, Will?
The Denver Broncos, the team we just got done talking about. And to me, this is a no-brainer for the Broncos. They offer, here's the hypothetical I offer you. They give the Chargers their choice of Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch and a second-round pick. I think that's the market set by the Sam Bradford trade. They got Sam Bradford for a first and a fourth. You get one of these quarterbacks that Denver took, not Siemian in the first round, but perhaps he's proven himself the equivalent of Lynch at this point, who's a first-round quarterback, plus a second, because Rivers is better than Bradford. And this is the deal. Denver's trading from strength. They're trading from surplus. They don't need 2 prospects. Both guys can't be on the field. In fact, they diminish each other's value. You got to get rid of them while they have their highest potential value, which is now. Couple that with your window. In the NFL, you've got a 3 to 4 year window, and you cannot sell me on the fact that Phillip Rivers right now in that 3 to 4 year window exponentially increases the Broncos' ability to win the Super Bowl.
Right, which is why they should have done this in the offseason. Absolutely right, Phillip Rivers on the Broncos. In fact, last year we were talking about this on Sports Nation. You know, should they trade Phillip Rivers? Because, and by the way, mainly for Phillip Rivers' sake. He's a great quarterback who is stuck in a situation where he's just never going to win a Super Bowl there. It doesn't seem like it. Although in the NFL, every time you think that, you know, suddenly a team makes a run. But San Diego has not seemed to be serious about putting a Super Bowl team around him. And when you think about Phillip Rivers on the Broncos, as though they could get, I mean, that is such a great fit. But we're in the middle of a season. So what you're talking about, 3 to 4 year window, the assumption is Rivers will play well till he's 40. He might. But
He's 34 now, so 38.
No, he's 36 now.
Oh, Rivers?
How old is Philip Rivers right now?
Rivers is going to be 35 in December.
Okay, so 34. Okay, so yeah, he might have a 3 or 4 year window, or maybe even a little longer. The point is, the Broncos are defending a Super Bowl championship. This guy doesn't know the offense, hasn't played there, and now you're bringing him in half or a third of the way through the season where they're undefeated. The time to do this was the off season. Now, I don't know if you pull the trigger now all the way, well, the season's underway, or maybe this upcoming off season. I don't know you do it now.
Stephen, your thoughts?
You know what? I ignored Will from the moment that he said the Denver Broncos was the team that Philip Rivers needed to end up with. Because if you're the Broncos, you're one of 3 undefeated teams left in the National Football League. You've got the premier defense, which, by the way, led you to a Super Bowl title. You're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. The parts around you in your new quarterback, meaning Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, C.J. Anderson, etc., along with at least a decent offensive line. There's simply no excuse to change anything. Trevor Siemian has been playing. Certainly, he's looked better than Peyton Manning looked last year. Paxton Lynch even came in there and did a little something. And so when you look at it from that perspective, why even bother? At the end of the day, here's what it comes down to. You can say what you want, you can believe what you want, or whatever the case may be. If Philip Rivers was going to go anywhere, talk to me about the Buffalo Bills, or to a lesser degree, actually to more of a degree, because I like Tyrod Taylor. Talk to me about the New York Jets. Talk to me about Philip Rivers being in a New York Jets uniform.
The Rams.
Having Brandon Marshall to throw the football to. I mean, I'm thinking Philip Rivers to San Diego. You could talk about the Rams. That would be another option. But I definitely think the New York Jets, if you want to legitimately compete for a Super Bowl with their ability to get at the passer, if you've got a quarterback experienced enough to refrain from making mistakes and get receivers the ball and make the offense more prolific, it might not put as much pressure on the defense, and they could be formidable, and we can see where it goes from there. That's where I would think about it.
Yeah, but the reason it happens, the reason it happens for the Broncos is because they're the ones to equip to answer both of your questions. I appreciate you ignored me, because then you missed all of the wonderful arguments I did to back up my position. It's this, Max. Here's why you make the trade now. Because the Chargers would be more willing to do it now, seeing that they're in rebuilding mode. In the offseason, they didn't have that reality. They didn't know that reality. Now they do. So the Chargers
won't they know that reality in this upcoming
perhaps
off-season?
Going forward.
Right.
But also on the Broncos side, the reason to do it now is because how is this a lose proposition for the Broncos? If Philip Rivers can't come in and learn the offense, well, you've still got Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch, whichever quarterback wasn't traded away. So you could continue, theoretically, this continuity with the upside of, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, an all-time top 8 quarterback career-wise in the numbers. You have that potential icing, you take
because
that.
Because I think everything you're suggesting can be accomplished in this off-season, where he has the whole preseason to prepare. And also, to Stephen A's point, I don't know if the Broncos really need now.
I'm just not willing to.
He makes them better. Philip Rivers would make the Broncos better.
That's the end of that argument.
He does. He makes them better.
They're 4-0.
That's the.
They
Oh, come on.
They don't need to make a change. They've got 2 guys that can be their potential.
Good enough.
Future.
Good enough is not an argument.
Someone.
Good enough is not an argument.
They could win a Super Bowl.
The simple question is this: is Philip Rivers better than Trevor Siemian?
Yes.
And I think we know the answer is yes. So does that make the Broncos better? Yes.
Yeah, but the question also is, at this point in the season, is Philip Rivers better than anyone they got? Yes, he's better than most quarterbacks I've ever seen, really. He's an excellent quarterback. But are they good enough right now without him? Because it's not the offseason, middle of the season. There are other factors to consider. I think also the answer is yes. The Broncos could easily repeat this year. And getting Rivers doesn't mean necessarily that they have a better chance this season.
All right, I'm rolling with the doctor in this one, but I'm so proud of you guys.
Smith.
We got through 4 topics essentially, and
it's my fault.
That's
I came
first
in,
time
I was
ever,
shooting from the hip, I had a little
passion. I think in first take history, it's great. We touched on a lot of things. Really proud. Really
Next week we'll argue about Charlie Strong.
Good. I'm looking forward to that. We'll stay and put. The NFL coming down hard on Antonio Brown for his touchdown celebrations. Someone at the desk has a problem with it. We'll discuss. Do you have a problem with this?
I think the bow and arrow is silly. I mean, I don't think it was meant as a violent situation. But, you know, I don't have a problem with fining a player, including Antonio Brown, for twerking or doing whatever you want to call it.
Popping it.
You know, I mean, it is sexually suggestive and lewd. And if you're packaging family entertainment, I get it. Fine him, fine. Here's what I have a problem with. How does what a guy does, how he behaves after the fact, the play on the field is over, affect things like field position? That is absurd. It's one thing to enforce a code of behavior because you want a family product. Very violent product, by the way. But and they sell alcohol during the commercials. But okay, fine. It's for kids, right? Fine. It's one thing to say, we're going to fine you if you behave that way. That's okay. But to say that somehow, to insist that that behavior is somehow conflated with the actual competition on the field is asinine. I've never understood it, and I'm totally against it. So forget the fine. I'm upset by the fact that it costs you field position because you celebrated.
Stephen A?
Go ahead, Will. Go ahead, Will.
Well, I guess I disagree with Max. I don't have a problem with the punishment for the act. I have a problem with the application of the rule, which I can't parse. I can't figure out. It's like most things in the NFL these days. And to me, this is actually one of the biggest problems the NFL faces is we don't know what we're watching, apparently. We can't trust our eyes. We can't see reality because there's this alternate reality, a shadow reality that is the NFL rulebook. And to know what a catch is, or a fumble, or who recovered a fumble, or what's too much celebration, you got to sort of consult the oracles. And they throw chicken bones and look into the instant replay booth, and they come out with some arbitrary decision that's never consistent. And that's a problem for the NFL because it convinces us that it allows us to consider that it's unfair, that it's rigged. It allows us to go, wait, why is that not a catch? It was a catch in the game last week. It was a catch earlier in the game. I don't understand what's going on here. That's the biggest problem. And so this arbitrary enforcement, because we don't know what's violent, what's sexually subjective, what the definition of a catch is, that's a real problem for the NFL. And honestly, I don't know how they nail it down. I mean, how do you technically nail down what's sexually suggestive?
Sexually suggestive. I do have to say.
Okay, but where's the line?
Both of those were. I'm just saying.
You can't trust the eyes point really quickly is a very good point because I also have a beef there, but it's not so much in terms of the application of the rules. It's like your team scores, but am I allowed to be happy? Oh, they're reviewing a scoring play. I don't know. Did it count? Did it not count? You can't ever feel the emotion in the moment that you can be confident is a permanent emotion that you're allowed to feel that way because they apply all these rules in ways that are like Byzantine and hard to understand.
Stephen A?
Y'all are making it more convoluted than it really needs to be. Fact of the matter is simple. NFL should have a rule instituted, nothing sexually suggestive. That's it, period. If it's not sexually suggestive, because obviously kids are watching, what's the problem? Why is Josh Norman being fined? I understand the Antonio Brown fine. Do I think it deserved to be for $25,000? No. But I understand the fine because you don't want something sexually suggestive. But how in God's name is Josh Norman getting a fine for that? For what?
It falls under violence.
Especially in the head. But here is the hypocrisy in it all. Look at the Redskins. Look at, you got the whole Native American issue, which Max has spoken eloquently about on many, many occasions, okay? And, you think about the bow and arrow and all of this other stuff. He being a member of the Washington Redskins, that may very well have been the reason that he did it. I don't see them looking to change the name. I don't see them looking to do anything about that. Why would you sit up there and penalize him for something that harmless? And that's just one of the examples. There are many others where the NFL has definitely been a bit excessive. I mean, you're controlling the shoes folks wear, the color socks they wear, and stuff like that. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. It doesn't stop, and that's why I applaud and completely appreciate Mike Tomlin and where he's coming from, where Mike Tomlin said we need you to be a bit more specific as to what warrants a fine, as opposed to something being so arbitrary and being implemented, on an arbitrary basis where you can't define exactly what the problem is until you are confronted by it. And if you got a problem with somebody, how about giving them a warning first and then make sure and see what happens thereafter,
so Stephen
as opposed to just, deciding to fine them.
You would pare down the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties in celebration to sexually suggestive. That's what you're saying. You'd allow the bow and arrow.
Yes.
You'd allow the flexing and all that.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I would allow the flex. You don't want anything. You don't want it going on for a minute or two or something like that. But at the same time, if somebody's flexing or whatever, what's the problem?
No.
What about a guy
Especially in
slitting his
sport like
throat, doing
football.
that kind of thing? That's okay?
Well, again, okay, fine. Something sexually suggestive
Or violent.
Or violent.
That's
Okay,
a
but
bow
here's
and
the
arrow.
problem. So here's the
Bow and
problem.
arrow
I'm
can
with
hurt
Stephen
someone.
A. I'm with Stephen A. The way to fix your problems is to pare down your rule book. It's like the federal criminal code. Nobody can get their hands around it, and there's laws that contradict each other. They literally don't know how many things are against the law at the federal level at this point. We don't know what's going on in the NFL. However, paring it down doesn't solve all your problems because, as you point out, once you say violence is wrong in celebration, okay, throat slash bad, bow and arrow shooting good, where was the line there? I don't see what the bright line is. I agree, by the way. Josh Norman shouldn't be penalized. Carlos Hyde was penalized last night for flexing, literally doing sort of the Incredible Hulk flex. I mean,
I think the answer, there's an answer to your question, and it's nothing sexual at all. And in terms of the violence, because it's inextricably tied to a very violent sport, right? You got to do it on a case-by-case basis, and when they see something they don't like, they can say, okay, he did that. The next time someone does that, that's going to be a fine. I think people can be reasonable about what violent stuff constitutes what. And to Stephen A's point, I think that's the real reason. I don't think it's about the violence with the bow and arrow. I think that the Washington franchise is under some pressure about the name, and they felt that that hit a little too close to home.
No question, but the flexing should be allowed. And I don't need to see a man twerking, just throwing that out there. I know.
Never
I know
sacrifice
that's
field
your
position
team
because
teammate.
they celebrated. That's absurd.